Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host, Mr. Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We finally reached the end of our position group look, and we're at the cornerback spot in this show. Last show we did safeties, which was Keith's first show back after some time off. And now we get into the end of this series. Should be a fun look, fun conversation. I love this group overall, especially with the addition that we had a couple weeks ago. I think it fills out this roster fairly well, where I feel a lot better about going into the season with it as far as the depth. But I think the two players at the top seem to be pretty strong, Keith. Hey, A, how you doing? B, what do you think overall of this group, and how do you feel?
Well, I actually feel pretty good about this group. You're right, especially with the addition that they signed, just for general depth, and it can allow them to slow play on some of the younger players. It's not that, like, you're not dependent on a Jeremiah Pritchett, type of situation. How if Pritchett ends up developing and is a good player, well, that's a good problem to have, because now you've got too many good players. Right. Oh, darn. But if he doesn't, since he's an unknown, then yeah, you have, you're in a situation where you can not really worry about it. And I like that. I like being in that spot. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that player. It's just so hard for me to feel good about where he's at, because I think, we all knew that it was going to be a challenge for him last year. I'm not exactly sure why they drafted him, to be completely honest, along with James, the other kid that ended up not making the roster, only because it just didn't seem to fit what I thought Mike McDonald was all about, which was the physicality and establishing the dominance and all that kind of stuff. And those guys just really didn't have that coming in. Pritchett, it depends on how hard he worked in the offseason, still doesn't exemplify like a physical guy that's going to come up and hit you and make sure you pay for any reception that he allows. He's more of a wrap-up tackler, just kind of a slot guy, I think, more than anything else, and just doesn't seem to fit.
I think
like
he's
the
a boundary
scheme diversity
only.
Really?
I don't think he can. I don't
he's
think
just
he can
so slight.
Well, he's 6 foot and he's long, and his most important attribute is his straight line speed. And so for him to be on the outside where he's got a boundary to protect him, he's only got to worry about in cuts and go routes, right? And he doesn't have to worry about also having the guy turn and go out, because there's a sideline there. And so I think it fits. He can do those things, and that's where they used him last year when the few snaps he got in. And I think that's kind of where we'll see him. He may develop into something where he can play more inside, but right now I think that's where we're seeing him. And you're right. The DJ James pick was disastrous. It was just, I don't understand why you would pick. Yeah, that was a throwaway pick, because it was really easy to see from his athletic testing that he was not an NFL athlete. And it didn't matter that he won awards. You don't have the speed. You don't have the agility. You can't play at this level. And, but Pritchett has some of the measurables, and you're right. It's not a great fit scheme wise, because McDonald wants guys that are physical, and he's not the most physical guy. But he still has athletic traits of a pro. And so I'm willing to
speed for days. I mean, he's got a great split. A 1.49 split is nothing to Yeah.
So I'm willing to let it play out, because I'm not going to write the kid off. I think he's got a chance to develop into a good player. I
feel a lot better about him, as like a back end of the roster defensive player, if he was more prominent on special teams, or if he had some return ability with that speed. I just haven't seen that or heard that about him. but we'll see. I mean, there's going to be a lot of competition with this room. I didn't intend to start with Nehemiah Pritchett, but the back end of the room, and we'll get to it in just a little bit, is going to be one of the best competitions, I think, in training camp, along with the wide receivers. In fact, the fact that they're matched up together is going to be really fun to watch.
Let's start at the top.
Let's do that.
If you're going to talk about Seattle's defensive backs, you have to start with Devin Witherspoon.
How about that ready-made banner?
I know,
right there.
that's nice. But Spoon is, he's the guy, right? He's the guy that makes everything work. He's going into his third year. He's only 24 now. He's still young. And even though he's got 2 years of experience, they use him everywhere. He plays on the outside. He's a starter there. They move him into the slot. They'll have him follow the other team's best receiver. They'll line him up and use him as a pass rusher. He can literally do anything and everything, and does so with an incredible physicality for a guy that's not that big. He's
5'11", 181.
He's the same size as Nehemiah Pritchett.
He's smaller than Nehemiah Pritchett. So Pritchett is 6 foot. Witherspoon's 5'11". They list Pritchett at 190. And
well, I'm looking at
Witherspoon at 181.
I'm looking at Seahawks.com, and they list Pritchett as 6 foot 188 and Spoon at 6 foot 185.
Interesting.
They're also both 24.
I think here's the deal for me, like the physicality thing. And I think I mentioned it when we talked about the safety group and Emanwari. And one of the keys for me that Emanwari solves is it takes Devin Witherspoon's oversized responsibility closer to the line of scrimmage and gives it to Emanwari, a guy that's much more physically aligned to be able to do that long term. Whereas Devin Witherspoon, he plays so aggressively, and you said it, and he's the heart and soul of the defense, and he has it in spades, right? The physicality, the temperament, the leadership, all of those things. But you don't want him to be completely slaughtered out there taking on tight ends, running backs, and tackles in space, or pulling guards or whatever, and getting washed out, trying to make a tackle. And eventually that's going to, I think, wear a guy down. And so having Emanwari out there, I think, really helps Witherspoon.
Yeah, because it allows them to use Witherspoon more as a cornerback and less as a all-purpose defensive back. Which is that good or bad? I mean, it's good for his long-term career, I think. But for the Seahawks, I can't say that it's. I mean, part of what makes Devin Witherspoon is the fact that he can do everything.
Yes. I think, and so, you kind of answered your question in the way that you wanted to answer it, as far as, it may have a negative impact to move him away from those sorts of things, unless you replace him with a player that has certain capabilities, physical capabilities, that might even be better than Witherspoon. Now, I'm not saying that the instincts and all that stuff are the same as Witherspoon. I'm just saying that the holding up and in the physical aspects of football, I think I can see Emanwari excelling in that and allowing the team to have options. Like, it won't be such a big drop off that they'll be, well, we can't do that. The Emanwari experiment is over. He can't be physical. He can't tackle. That's not even going to happen at all.
That's not going to happen now.
And so I think Witherspoon just is allowed to play a more natural position for him, which he accelerated at in college. And we'll kind of get back to that in the pro game. Now, he's still going to be up at the line of scrimmage. He's still going to be a guy that mixes it up, rushing the passer and all that kind of stuff. So they'll still use him in that way, but just a little bit of a drop off, I think. As far as like playing a strong safety type snap count. Hopefully that kind of falls away a little bit. Player wise, like, does everything extremely well. Last year was kind of a fall off, I thought. because I think he was aware of different players around him that he needed to compensate for. And he didn't really miss tackles per se, but I think that he was out of position a few different times because he was pulled one way to cover for somebody else and then trying to get back into the play. Just didn't get there in time. And coverage wise, he was okay. I mean, and being okay is great for him, still kind of a top 10 cover guy in the NFL, but not close to number one. What do you attribute that? And I'm going to say it was a drop off, but I mean, come on, the guy was still a terrific player, but that rookie season was phenomenal. And, didn't really have the interceptions and all that kind of stuff that you'd expect from maybe a guy of this talent.
Well, I think part of that is he plays really aggressive, and they use him up at the line of scrimmage and stuff. And so they take him out of position to get some of those interceptions and those things by his usage. But I think a part of it also, like you go back and you look at some of the big plays that people are like, ooh, he gave up a big play. And then you go back and you watch the All-22, and that was not his guy. He was covering, saw that someone else had missed coverage and came off of his guy to go, because you always cover the deepest person in that situation. So he was covering up for someone else's mistake, but he gets credited for giving up the big play when it's not him. That wasn't his responsibility. And so there's some of that. You're right. I think it's early in the season. He was a victim of the fact that the defense was just bad. And then once people started, staying home, doing their job, right, trusting the system, all that kind of stuff, and things clicked. And they, traded for a certain inside linebacker. Then once everything worked, he was a big reason of why it worked so well, because of his ability to do anything and everything and cover as within the top 10 at his position in the NFL. And also, high pass rush win rate and very physical tackle and tackling machine. And it just, he does
he's
everything.
Probably the first or second best tackling corner in the league.
Yeah.
And, that's a great thing to have in Mike McDonald's defense for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add with that player?
He's really good, and I like watching him play. Let's move on.
Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to actually the second year in this defense. To find out, and the addition of Emanwari and the different players around him that I think kind of all get lifted up a little bit. I think he really plays free this year. I mean, and just really makes some plays. So let's go to the other outside guy in this scheme, Tariq Woolen. 6'4", 205, came into the league with a lot of hype and fell into kind of Seattle's lap, I think. 4.28,
so.
Yeah, 4.28, 40, 3 interceptions, 8 pass breakups last year. Had the Pro Bowl rookie campaign, but it's kind of been hit and miss with Woolen. Is that fair? He's still very solid, but is the criticism that seems to surround him fair? Or are the expectations out of whack a little bit?
I think a little of both. In that so it depends on the criticism. The people who are questioning his coverage skills, I think, he's given up a couple big plays, but he's also used that speed to get back and remove big plays that should have happened. And sometimes those are his guys that he let go by, and other times it's him just recovering and making a play for someone else. And his coverage skills actually are really strong. And so I think in terms of the people who are expecting more from him in that's an expectation that I think is out of whack, because he's not going to be a top 10 cover guy at 6'4". He's got straight line speed, which is great, and he's a great athlete around, but it's going to be hard for him to keep up in the short area with some of the other guys. So for him to be a top 20, top 25 cover guy in the NFL, people should be like, that's the expectation. Where the criticism is valid is when people start talking about his lack of physicality. Because for a guy who's 6'4", 210, he should be a physical corner. He should be a guy that comes up, plays the run, makes tackles, and does those kind of things. Because he's the biggest corner on the team, and he should play like the biggest corner on the team. And there were times during Pete Carroll's final year when he played like he was really small, right? He played like he was a 5'9", 170 guy, just avoiding contact and trying to just cover, and getting, trying to get away with that. And you can't in today's NFL, especially not for Mike McDonald. And I think that, they challenged him to get better at that last year. And
I thought he did.
He did. I still don't think he's to the point where where the team wants him to be. But part of that also is that he was actually part of what made him fun as a rookie was he played physical. But then he hurt his shoulder in year 2. And he hasn't really been the physical guy since then, since the shoulder injury. He's still great. So his feet are great, still does, all the coverage things, but he hasn't been willing to just, stick his body out there and make a hit. And I think the injury might have something to do with it. He needs to get over that.
So let's stay with these two players for just a minute. I just want to talk to you about the future. Like Tariq Woolen, this is his 4th season. This is a contract year.
Yep.
He's not under contract in 2026. The team could potentially have him on the short list for an extension. We don't know. I don't know that he would be priority number 1. First off, let's stick with Tariq Woolen and kind of comment on the idea of an extension versus letting him play it out and see where we're at in February, March. And maybe we have him take a look around, see what's out there, and come back and sign a team-friendly deal. What are your thoughts?
I don't think there's a super team-friendly deal unless he gets hurt, waiting for Tariq Woolen. I think the contract a year from now is going to be bigger than the contract now. And I don't like that. I would rather, if the team's going to re-sign him, I would rather have them do it now. Just get it done. They have the cap space. They've got a lot. It's not about priority 1 or whatever. You have a ton of cap space and you have an opportunity to get a guy, lock him in, and move on. So do it. Now, if Woolen's asking price is crazy, then we're not going to do that. But if he's being reasonable and it's in there, I think it would behoove the team to get him locked up long term. But I mean, it's a negotiation, right? It's got to be what he asks for and everything. I just think that what it will take to actually sign him a year from now will be higher than what it would take right now. Because when you have to bid against other teams, someone else is going to give him a big contract.
Especially if you're going to be a top 5 defense, and he's going to be a big part of that. Mm-hmm. So he's likely to have a really pretty decent year. Now, when you take a look at all the players that are kind of eligible, that 2022 draft class for extensions, I think you start with Charles Cross. Obviously, mm-hmm. Abe Lucas is in that conversation. Boye Mafe is in that conversation. Tariq Woolen. Who gets the priority there? I know John really does like to prioritize guys and do things in a certain order. Where does Woolen fall into that?
Probably second behind Charles Cross, but Cross might be expensive enough that they think about letting him walk and replace him.
So. I don't think so.
But I would put him in there. Personally, I think Abe Lucas is a guy that needs more attention on there, but he's been hurt, and we know that he has the knee problem, and where the state
I think
of
he's
that
a guy
is
that you might do in December. Okay, he made it through almost 2 seasons fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let him kind of play into the season and see where he's at.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year.
Or sometime around the bye week, mid-season, we start, talking to him about the extension. Just because it's behind the scenes. It's not, the player doesn't actually have much to say in all of that. It's really his agent. And so it doesn't really affect, teams during the middle of the year, unless a team starts lowballing him and giving him, like pissing him off. You don't want to do that. But but you can talk to the agent and have the agent be like, okay, this is what we're looking at, and go from there. And if you can come to terms fairly quickly, why not get him? If he can prove that he's healthy, get him locked in.
I mean, this is somewhat of a similar situation. Charles Cross and Abe Lucas to Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen. Only Woolen's going to come before Witherspoon, but Witherspoon, both Cross and Witherspoon, first round draft picks. Mm-hmm. Devin Witherspoon can easily be shown to be a top 10 overall value at the cornerback position. He's going to get paid like that when that comes up year after next. And then, I'm sure the 5th year option is going to be used with Witherspoon. Mm-hmm. Charles Cross, you can extend him now, but you do have that 5th year option in place as well. So there's timing wise, you do have a little bit of flexibility, but I'm sure they'd like to get these things done. Okay. Let's talk about Josh Jobe. So here's a player that's been kicking around the league for a little while, 27 years old, like 4 teams, ended up on the practice squad at some point with Seattle, played well enough to kind of play himself up onto the roster, and then injuries kind of made him kind of get more snaps than you'd thought. There's kind of a feeling, I guess, more than anything, that when Josh Jobe came in, he did a pretty good job, and our cornerback room is pretty decent because he's on it and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if the team necessarily feels that way. They kind of gave him a restricted free agent offer and then rescinded that and signed him to a deal. 5'11", 180 pounds, again, a smaller corner. He did come in and play over 400 snaps for the team last year, but he just wasn't that good. I mean, well, the perception is he was, but when you look at the tape and you look at the missed tackle rate and the coverage, as far as the completion percentage against and quarterback rating against and so forth, he's at the bottom third of the league in those categories.
Yes. So there's something in what you said that I'm going to dispute. When he came on because of injury, he was not good. He was awful when he first got on the field. His first 2 or 3 games it was like, God, people get healthy quick because this guy does not belong on a football field. But then something clicked, and I don't know if he just stopped thinking so much and just started playing, or the team, minimized his responsibilities and just let him focus on a couple of things, whatever it was. After those first 3 games, he actually did play well. There's some missed tackles. That's one thing that he can fix, and that we would love to see him fix. But as far as coverage stuff and him playing the slot, and they asked him to do slot stuff, which in the year ideally they wanted Devin Witherspoon doing those things, and they bring someone in to be the other outside corner. But they had to leave Witherspoon outside because of the injuries, and so he ended up in the slot doing those things, and it got better. And down the stretch, it was pretty good. And so, I mean, that's why they gave him the restricted free agent offer, because they can, and that basically just protects him. He can't go elsewhere. And then they worked out a longer term deal, which,
well, they gave him a 1-year deal.
I thought it was a 2-year deal.
And whatever. It wasn't what they gave him was a 1-year deal that didn't have as much guaranteed money in it as the restricted deal, and it was a little less. It wasn't. Anyway, it ends up being about the same, but it gives the Seahawks ability to kind of move away from them if they wanted to during training camp. But what I'm trying to say is that position, while on the surface seemed pretty solid, and then you add Pritchett to that as the 4th corner, and that's the way we were going to go into the season until a couple of weeks ago. Now, they had been looking at a couple players, Rasul Douglas, who I personally would have preferred, a little bit more physical corner. But the team seems to be, and we'll go through the other players at the bottom of the position group. The team seems to favor these smaller corners that have the agility and the speed to kind of play multiple spots. And so they didn't go with a Rasul Douglas. They brought back a familiar face, a guy that we had originally drafted on this team, Shaquille Griffin. Now, he played with Minnesota last year on a $4.5 million deal with $2.4 million of that signing bonus and 1.5 guaranteed. I think they haven't released the contract details with him yet on Over the Cap, but I have a feeling it's going to be in that range. So it's a really friendly deal for, what will probably end up amounting to being just kind of a stability factor on the roster, a third or fourth corner, a guy that's going to get, 25 to 40% of the snaps across the season. He could play more in certain games, certain matchups, etc. Tell me how you feel now about having Griffin on the roster and what that does overall.
Oh, he makes the roster or the position group a lot cleaner. In that there's not that, like we were saying earlier, like if Pritchett doesn't develop, you're okay because you've got him. This is a guy that is still good enough to start and be a starting corner in the league. We saw that last year in Minnesota when he left Seattle and I believe he went to Jacksonville, signed a big contract. Like he'd earned that, and he's maybe not always the most physical player, which you mentioned already, but his coverage skills are really good, and
he's a great tackler. He's good sound fundamentally all the way through.
And so to have a guy that is good enough to start in the league as your third corner, whether he comes in and plays the slot or whether he comes in and plays the outside, and so it allows them to move Witherspoon inside, who cares, right? He gives you an upgrade as that third corner. Yes, Josh Jobe played better down the stretch and looked pretty good, but he doesn't have starting cornerback talent. Shaq Griffin does. Well, Quill Griffin, not Shaq. Don't call him Shaq. Quill Griffin does have that talent. So, now you've added a lot of depth. Now you've got a guy like Jobe who's kind of, he's going to be there. He's your fourth corner. And so he'll probably make the roster because he proved, he made it last year first as a special teams player and then got forced into playing. So he can play special teams. So that's going to be a possibility for him. And now you're looking at a guy like Pritchett who has upside talent as your fifth corner.
Yes.
Now suddenly it feels a lot.
And with an opportunity, he could displace a guy like Jobe this season and be your fourth guy, and take fourth corner snaps, which would end up being 20% of the snaps. He'd play a lot of special teams. He'd kind of develop. He'd have an opportunity to develop a little bit more. I think Seattle would love to see that. I just don't know how Mike McDonald feels about this player. Like if he had input on the draft, like how much input did he have on the draft to select this player? It's the kind of player that he wants to have. They could move off Pritchett. It wouldn't be a shock to me if maybe a guy at the towards the bottom of the roster now, or Shamir Jean Charles, who we haven't talked about yet, who they brought in as a free agent, mostly for special teams. But a guy like that, it is kind of a similar player when he is on the football field. Or some of these other guys like Demarion Williams, came out in the 2022 draft, a fourth round pick. They like Demarion Williams, I hear. Tyler Hall, another kid that's a similar size. Zai Alexander, a guy that was undrafted this year that thought everyone was going to have a draft grade on him, ended up being available, physical press cover corner type guy with 4.56 speed. So he's not super fast, but he's got that physical ability. And then at the very end, Isis Waxter, who's extremely on the opposite end of most of the cornerbacks on our roster, probably closer to Reek Woolen as far as the physicality, and doesn't have the speed, but he ran a 4.56 40 at the combine, or he tested at that speed, but at a pro day, he ran a 4.48. It's a little bit better, but he's 6'1", 209, kind of a bigger, a stronger, aggressive guy. A guy I thought the team may look at safety as him as a safety, and he may end up working into that. But so those are the guys at the bottom of the roster. Anybody out of that group have any appeal to you, or could displace the players that we talked about at the top?
Well, to me, when you're looking at these guys, and you know, no one's going to displace the guys at the top. I think those guys are safe. If you're looking at like Jeremiah Pritchett, Josh Jobe, look at the guys that are first or second year, because they're cheap. That's part of why I think that, you know, Jeremiah Pritchett has a inside track over Shamar Jean Charles, because Jean Charles, like, this is his fifth year in the league. You got to pay him as a fifth-year player. And that's a big difference. It really is. And so having that fifth round, you know, pick, rookie salary, which is tiny, that matters. But then you look at, okay, Isis Waxter, he is a really physical guy, doesn't have necessarily the speed, and that's why I'm kind of wondering what they do with him. But if he was a little
4.48 is not bad.
4.48 is actually pretty good. But you know, if he brings that physicality to special teams, and he's a rookie, he's playing on an undrafted rookie salary, there's a lot of there's a lot of like that looks good. I mean, there's value. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a lot of value in a player like that, because if you're the sixth corner on a team, or even the fifth corner on the team, you better be able to make an impact on special teams, because that's why you made the roster. It's not because you have to have some upside as a corner, but the team's hoping you never see the field on defense. And so they're keeping you because your special teams ability.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at Charles, Demarion Williams, Tyler Hall, Zy Alexander, Isis Waxter, it's going to come up to upside, a guy that they want to develop on the practice squad, because these are practice squad guys. And what they do on special teams. Like, is there anybody that has any return ability out of there? Is there a guy like Isis Waxter? It looks like after a couple weeks in training camp, he could be a better, safety. And so they kind of transition him over into that. And so they keep him around to develop that over the season. But really nobody pops. I mean, nobody's standing out. I think depending on what they do with the position, I don't see them keeping any less than 5 corners. And really, I'd mentioned the competition, but really it's a competition between like a Pritchett and a Jobe there. And then a couple other guys that could maybe surprise, just because we have not seen them yet on the field in this scheme, in this defense. Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody really pops, and which would be a great surprise.
Zy Alexander is really interesting to me. Yeah. I can't wait to watch him. I think he has, some legit juice to make an NFL roster. He's got to work his ass off to get there, but he's
very productive.
Yeah. And
very productive. I think that 4.56 40 really kind of threw some folks, but he's still a very physical guy. He's 6'1", almost 6'2", and 190 pounds. So he's a little slight, but he's super long. And we'll see. Yeah,
he plays physical, which you got to be able to do.
And so does Waxter. So. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a fun group to watch, especially against our receiver group. You take a look at all our receivers against our own corners. Those are fun battles to watch, because that defense is stingy, and Mike McDonald wants them playing at a super high level from the get-go. So they come out the same that they were when they finished the season. And so they're going to be playing hard in training camp. And then you've got some wide receivers and Sam Darnold and company that really want to prove that they belong and that they're ahead of schedule, so to speak. So those will be fun matchups to watch. That's it. That's the group.
Yeah, that's the group.
The series.
That's the series. We are done looking at each position group.
Yeah. And it's, so let's just pull it back a little bit. How do you feel overall about the roster? We're going to get into some more in-depth shows coming up and training camp, talking about the roster a little bit more, how it shapes, how it forms, how we construct it and make those final countdowns. What kind of team are we going to be this year?
Well, when you look at the roster, I think on offense, they've got depth, but not the high-end quality. And on defense, you've got a lot of high-end quality, but not the depth. The defense is going to be elite as long as they don't get too injured. And the offense is going to exist.
Well, they existed last year. I mean, let's be honest. When you're ranked 28th or 27th in the league DVOA as an offense for the season, they had some bright moments, but they were so inconsistent with their run game. Everything was just kind of not good overall. Mm-hmm. It seems to me, even if the roster stepped back a little bit as far as top end talent is concerned, we're talking about DK Metcalf, we're talking about Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith, etc. It seems like the consistency to me would be better because the offensive coordinator, the offensive line coach, the running game coordinator, the passing game coordinator are more in sync with how an NFL offense needs to operate and the vision that Mike Macdonald has as a whole. It seems like the internal conflicts there would kind of wash away and you would end up having an offense that was just better at being an NFL offense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be less explosive because you don't have DK Metcalf and his crazy ability to just scare the crap out of defenses because he can run by anybody. But less explosive. Okay. Are you more consistent? Can you move the chains? That's the one thing that they couldn't do last year was convert on third down. Can you convert on third down? Can you run the ball? If they can do those things, then it will be better overall, even if it's less explosive.
I'll be honest. I hate offenses like the one that we're going to run out this year. I really love defenses. I love solid defenses. I love explosive offenses. I just do. I want an explosive running back who can hit a home run from anywhere on the field. I want an explosive thrower. I want guys that can really catch those balls, contested catches over the middle. I want a red zone offense that's intimidating. It's going to remind me of a Jared Goff Los Angeles Rams offense where it just methodically marched down the field, converting third downs, at a higher rate than we did last year, maybe even the year before. And the red zones are going to get converted, but they're not going to be converted in explosive plays. They're going to be converted because we're just solid. We move people out of the way. We gain the yards we need to gain. We get the touchdown. So to me, it's going to be a little boring, a little vanilla, but it wins games. Like you can't check every single box off. And maybe you can, maybe a Super Bowl team does with their roster. It's hard to check every box in the NFL. You've got to have this, and this. If you only have 3 of those, then you're a fringy playoff team, but you're not quite ready for the Super Bowl. I think we've got 3 things checked off. We've got an elite defense. Our defensive line is solid. We've got decent weapons on the offense. If Sam Darnold has a similar season to Minnesota, not statistically way out of whack, but just solid. And then whatever that offensive line turns into, I think is the key for me. Like if that offensive line ends up being top 15 somehow, some way.
Yeah. If it's just
and our running game is top 15,
if
we could end up having like a team that could get to the NFC Championship game. I kid you not. It's not like I think we could be a 9-win team, but I also think we could be a 12-win team and really do some damage because of the consistency that we'll establish on offense, and then a killer lights out defense. Pretty good combo.
Yeah. So you're saying that you don't like methodical offenses. That's, I mean, the big plays, the explosive plays, those are fun.
Yeah.
But I want an offense that converts on third down, that doesn't need a big play in order to score points, that can put together a drive, eat clock, give the defense a break when they need it, convert on third downs, get points.
All those things. I agree. I just it's okay. I know that it wins games though, right? I mean, that's what I want is to win games. And that's what everyone wants. But there's just something about those electrifying offenses that really are attractive. And also those methodically driven offenses you kind of hate to see as like in past years, Pete Carroll defenses had a horrible time stopping those sorts of teams. We're going to be that team this year where defenses have a hard time getting us off the field on third downs.
That's the ideal thing. If you can convert on third down, you give yourself another 3 plays. That was one of the things that was so frustrating last year is they, because they couldn't convert, it was like, oh, well, we only ran, 41 plays on offense the whole game. Yeah, because and they're like, oh, well, we couldn't get to everything. We had this running game, like running plays, but we just didn't have enough plays. Yeah, convert on third down, and you'll have more plays, and you'll have a chance to do those things. And that's just something that this team needs. And it might be boring. People might not like it. I don't care. I want an offense that can milk the clock a little bit and run the football and
you know what? When we were talking about this in February, Keith, when we were leading, we had just dismissed the old regime, Ryan Grubb and company, and we were looking at all the options for offensive coordinators. And the very first show we had, and this is like a week into the true off season where no offensive coordinator, it's just, we're in that search mode. We had a show where we talked about offensive coordinators available and who would be a good fit and so forth. And we focused immediately on Clint Kubiak for the exact same reasons that you're describing, as a complementary offense to what Mike McDonald likes to do on defense. And sure enough, here we are. This is what we've got. And it is what it is. For me, it's a love-hate thing. I love it because I do know that it's going to do exactly what you just described. And it's going to be, something that helps the defense, keeps the offense, on the field, the defense off the field. We're scoring points. We're converting. All those things are what Mike McDonald refers to as complementary. And so I will miss some big plays at certain times, but I tell you what, Sam Darnold was a big play quarterback last year for Minnesota. He just had a couple of different weapons that we don't necessarily have. Yeah, especially Jefferson.
I would say the best wide receiver in the NFL.
And so I don't know how that's going to translate this year. I expect them to take shots. I just don't know what the success rate will be. And maybe somebody will emerge, like Torrey Horton, for example. Maybe that kid emerges, or their Scantling's just better than we think he is. And they end up, throwing the ball downfield more than we expect. But that remains to be seen. But I do like the idea of converting more on third down and in the red zone. I mean, those two things were certainly weaknesses last year that aren't going to be weaknesses this year.
Better not be.
Okay. Let's get out of here. So we finished the position group series. We've got a coaches show coming up. And then we've got a training camp preview coming up. But one of our favorite shows of the season that we do every year is our question and answer and beer tasting show. That's going to be our very next show. And it's going to be fun. Keith has chosen the beers that we are going to sample. at least the category, and it's Irish red ales, which is, I think, probably a favorite to me because I love those types of beers. And so that'll be a fun show. And that's our 9th annual question and answer beer tasting show. And that'll be super fun. So let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for joining us, everyone. You can find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. And you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms and our YouTube channel. And you get there, you subscribe, make sure you have that show up in your feed week in, week out. We do a couple shows a week, and like it and leave a comment. That would be great. So that's it. And we'll see you next time. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.